All right, we're back here for the second session with Mr. Brian Tabor here. This is the REBT counseling session. So we'll just begin. Brian, just want to thank you for coming today. Is there anything you'd like to talk about?
Yeah. So a couple years ago, I used to work at a summer camp, and I worked there for 3 summers in a row. My first summer, I was a counselor. My second summer, I was a senior counselor. So I was on leadership, and it was kind of like being a counselor for the counselors.
Mm-hmm.
And I planned on going back for my third summer, and it seems to be appropriate that the next step would be another promotion of sorts. Now I would become the program director, who is kind of the guy who's in charge of the camp and in charge of the program, makes everything happen, and basically leads the camp. And so I was excited about the opportunity to do that, and I felt like it would have been a good step in leadership, and I felt like almost in a sense that I deserved it because I put in the time, and not that alone, but that it fit. I was the only returning guy leader on staff from the leadership team, so I felt like I was also the only one qualified that had been on leadership for at least a year or a summer to be able to do that again. And what ended up happening was a guy who had worked 6 weeks, hadn't been on leadership yet. They asked him to do it, and looking back on it, it seemed to fit. But at the time, I was like, okay, because I felt like I deserved it over him. Obviously, the leaders and powers that be felt otherwise. And then around that same time, I had a roommate, one of my best friends. I was in his wedding this past summer. He was asked to be the intern at the BSM, and it took him a couple weeks to decide if he wanted to do it or not, because he had different ideas of what he wanted to do after graduation. So he wasn't sure if he wanted to do that. In my head, I'm like, dude, that's like a perfect gig. He got paid really well to do it. It would have been for 2 years. So for him, it would have been great. And for me, I wanted that position as well, because I knew I wanted to come to seminary. It would have given me 2 years of ministry experience. It would have given me a scholarship for seminary. And I would have gotten paid to save up for school as well. And so I know that I wanted that position, and I felt, not that he didn't deserve it, I felt that it was great that they picked him, but I felt in my head, I'm like, why didn't they ask me? Because I felt that we were both equally qualified for that job. And so I was a little upset by that, and both of the things kind of happened at the same time. And I was kind of, not angry, but not even really frustrated, but maybe a little disappointed or dejected, feeling that I feel like I was qualified for those positions, that in some sense that I was deserving of those positions, but the powers that be did not approach me or ask me to fill those positions, and I was kind of upset by that.
Yeah, so it really seems like, just want to confirm with what you're saying, you had 2 separate instances within a short period of time where you believe you should have received a promotion for a certain position or a new position that you thought you would have done great at, and both times you were unable to achieve that or weren't given that opportunity to do so. And because of that, you felt really disappointed and dejected because you weren't given that opportunity. And maybe even, I sense maybe a little pride in there that, I feel like I could have done this a better job, or I'm more qualified than the people that they're hiring, and why didn't they give me that opportunity? Which, it's a hard thing to handle sometimes. And it clearly shows that there's, what did you believe about, when those issues took place, what were the beliefs you had about what was going on that were in your mind? What were you thinking?
I kind of expressed some of them a second ago, but I felt that I was qualified for the positions. I was upset that I wasn't given the opportunity by the leaders who picked those positions. So yeah, I guess just upset. I didn't want to take anything away from the guys who they gave the positions to, because I felt like they were just as qualified for it, but I felt like I was due for something like that. And I think when you said pride, that was definitely an element of that for sure. Looking back at it, I was like, why not me? I mean, I'm just as good as they are. So.
And as a result of these thoughts and during this time, do you feel like that there were any consequences to yourself that you felt because of these thoughts that you were feeling? Because I know if I probably ask you now, looking back on it, you probably would say, I probably shouldn't have thought that way, or at that time. So.
Oh yeah, sure. I think for me, my not my opinion of the guys who are given the position, there is some resentment towards them.
Mm-hmm.
And not from anything they had done, but simply by the fact that they had something that I wanted. So there's a little bit of resentment there, and at the same time, a lot of self-reflection on my own part. Of okay, so I didn't get that position. What's wrong with me?
Mm-hmm.
What did they see in those guys that they didn't see in me? What about my leadership? What about my character, my integrity, my abilities? What is that gap that they saw that they didn't give me that position? And so I was beginning to question my own strengths, weaknesses, values, leadership ability, and I began to question those myself. And I don't know if that questioning was warranted, or if it just created more self-doubt in me that wasn't necessary.
Did you feel insecure, maybe, that,
I think it'd be a good word.
Yeah, that's very hard. I mean, there's a lot of times where, we sometimes think that, God's been preparing us and this is the perfect time.
Yeah.
And, that, this is something we've always wanted to do and it's just right now and we want it to happen. And, when God shuts that door, it's very hard for us to sit there and say, well, I understand, when, every ounce of us says that this doesn't make any sense. And we start to feel a lot of those things like resentment towards the people that earned the position, and pride and maybe some anger involved in there.
Sure.
And it's very difficult. So I just want to kind of give you some, constructive ideas of how to combat, those thoughts from, happening again. And one of those first things that I would, recommend is probably, prayer, for one. Second would be scripture, for sure. There's this verse in 1 Peter that talks about humbling yourself, and at the proper time God will promote you and give you, the desire of your heart, or what's going on at that time, and make that come to pass in His timing and not our own. And that could be definitely something that would help you maybe be more patient in the future when other opportunities arise, and allow you, to have more peace and relying on God's timing in things instead of, maybe, quickly judging the situation, especially when decisions are made that aren't in your favor. I just think that's a good one. And I guess, my question is that if I had to ask you, show me why this should have happened in your favor at the time over these other men, and why you think that was right. Mm-hmm. And you want to try it?
Looking back at it, I can't. The powers that be, the guys who made the decision to hire the other guys instead of me, obviously knew what they were doing, had more wisdom than I did in my unwise self. So yeah, I can't.
Yeah. Well, I feel like that through this, conversation, I feel like that, I've seen a change just in your attitude over, the situation a couple years ago that you encountered, and talking to you now, and your maturity and understanding the situation more now has helped you grow, and made you understand how this works in the future. It's a great thing because, it's hard sometimes to understand what's going on at the present time and to understand what God's doing. Yeah. And, I just, like we talked about, just, always resort to, first prayer and first seeking God's word, and then, the wisdom of the people in your life, going to talk to, close friends or family, and seeking their counsel about what they think is, their view on the matter to help you cope with what's going on. And just, I feel like those 3 steps are key to fighting those, those thoughts that you had about what had happened, even though you didn't agree with it. So, Well, is there anything else you'd like to talk about at all about the situation?
No, I think pretty well covered.
Okay, well, in the future, for some activities you could probably do to, continue to grow. Obviously, Bible studies, one, to have a good discipleship of guys and grow in the Word would definitely help as far as attitude goes.
Sure.
And once again, just accountability with a close brother that you could talk to about issues like this. And I feel like when the issues addressed more openly as it's happening, it would help you, gather more discernment and be more into prayer and understanding God's voice and what's leading you in that time. So that's my activities that I have planned for you. Would you like to participate in those?
And you can do that.
All right. Well, thank you, Brian, for being here and talking to us about everything, and talk to you soon.
All right.
All right.